The online safety bill shows how middle management zealots have become the modern day foot soldiers of tyranny, and they're the suited, hired assassins of tyrants. Consider that Dame Jacinda Kate Laurel Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand and now holder of various positions arising from the rich soils of globalist wokery, such as a Harvard Fellowship, or in her case, two Harvard Fellowships, said in September 22 to the UN.
This week we launched an initiative alongside companies and non-profits to help improve research and understanding of how a person's online experiences are curated by automated processes. This will also be important in understanding more about mis- and disinformation online, a challenge that we must, as leaders, address.
An initiative alongside companies and non-profits to improve research and understanding. Note the Tony Blair hands indicating sincerity and genuine communication. She goes on to link wars, isn't Ukraine the best? Disease, isn't COVID the best? And the poor, in her belief, misinformed idiots' understanding of these things, war and disease, and how they need help to understand it, to the idea that freedom of speech must be curtailed to save freedom of speech. Likewise, Dame Melanie Henrietta Dawes, Chief Executive of Ofcom, who regulate communications in the UK to include TV, film, print, online, pigeon messengers, etc. Dame Melanie says this.
Today is a major milestone in the mission to create a safer life online for everybody across the UK. And at Ofcom, we're really excited to get started and to begin to implement these new laws. We feel very privileged to have been given this important role. So what you'll see from us in a few weeks' time is our first codes, our first standards that we expect tech firms to put in place so that children are protected online and so that we're all protected from things like fraud and other illegal activities.
It isn't what she says about the online safety bill, but the manner of her saying it, like an enthusiastic child who knows the sparkling gold present under the tree is exactly the dimensions and weight of an Xbox or PlayStation. She just can't wait to get her hands on it, and that isn't what a regulator should be like. The Online Safety Bill is a draconian, behemoth piece of legislation passed by Parliament and now only awaiting royal assent. And unless ultra-Schwabite King Charlie the Nth is suddenly going to undergo an awakening and lead the charge by refusing his assent, he isn't, then it will come into law and be enforced by the entirely awful Ofcom. The bill is big, broad, and brutal. Big in size, being, with notes, over 300 pages, which is huge for legislation in the UK. Broad, covering anything and everything only in theory, and its apologists use this notion that it is all in theory as a catch-all pass to suggest that sense will prevail in a pragmatic application of the law, whereas anything and everything ever implemented by legislation demonstrates that it will always go further than the most fearful imagined it could. And it is brutal, not in the old-fashioned sense of sending heavies round to bump off your political opponents, but in the modern sense of creating what I call an adjacent space. By this, I mean that the suggested impetus is to stop kids looking at genitalia and other offensive things like the Parliament channel or NHS public information adverts. This, on the face of it, is a laudable aim. But in the modern assassin's techniques, this provides access to what I'm calling the adjacent space, which is where the actual bloodletting takes place, and the middle management assassins step in. The bill allows for swingeing punishments for social media platforms that fail not only to stop the crimes of harmful content, whatever that is, when they take place, but if they don't preemptively avoid the crimes taking place, then they can be equally punished. There was some last-minute haggling that seemed to remove the requirement for legal but harmful element for adults. This may only be lip service. As previously indicated, you can always rely on common sense to tell you what will happen. You don't build a wall to withstand the ambient conditions that prevail at the time of the building of the wall. Rather, you think about the worst conditions it must withstand and add on a bit for strength or flexibility, for good measure. And that common sense planning by, God forbid, social media platforms will play towards the draconian, as it is intended to play towards the draconian. The laudable stated aims of protecting the children at all costs will not be met by this bill, as the problems of what kids get up to when unsupervised are not new and reflect more than technological change, cultural change, and that won't be addressed by this legislation. Freedom, the responsibility, the ability to think clearly, the ability to make decisions about danger, to include facing it without being hobbled by fear. These are lessons that these legislators, who now spend half of their time complaining about being jostled or being called names, or otherwise victimized going about their middle management activities. These are lessons they can never give, because, quite frankly, they're not worthy to give them. Our legislators, prime ministers, chief executives have all become, in roles which were once exalted, middle managers and assassins of freedom. They install the innocuous antechamber like a dentist's waiting room, not as an end in itself, but for a place to place the door through to the adjacent space, where all the action takes place. The adjacent space is infinitely larger than the tiny entrance would suggest, and is a space to operate in for those who would have us say nothing and be nothing for them to worry about. I don't know where this will end, but remember, they're not supposed to be middle managers. They're supposed to be democratic representatives. Where they fail to be democratic representatives, it's your duty as an OIC to always try to worry them. It's only right.